Hi, I'm Collie, poker coach, and I have for you 5 tips about how to play a 4-bet pot. The first tip I have about 4-bet pots is that pre-flop, 4-bet pots are probably the area weaker players are the least balanced. So some weaker players might be tilted or afraid and just want to get it in with a hand like eights. Other players that are weaker might never have any 4-bet bluffs and only really peddle the nuts. So you'll never see them with a hand worse than ace-king 4-betting pre-flop. You really want to pay attention to each player, track their stats with a HUD if you have it, or if you play on a site without HUDs, just look for the hands that player takes to showdown in a 4-bet pot. If you see them get to showdown 5 times in 4-bet pots, and they never have a hand worse than ace-king, then that player is probably not finding sufficient bluffs pre-flop. The next tip I have for you is about the shallow SPR in 4-bet pots. So one thing to keep in mind actually is that shallow SPR, stack to pot ratio, actually minimizes the skill advantage that the stronger player has, because there are just sort of less decisions. They make a bet, and if you just want to go all in, that's totally fine. If there's a 2-bet pot and a player just randomly goes all in for 94 big blinds, that's a huge mistake. You can get it in with a lot less equity, and just generally it's harder to make a massive mistake. So this is an area where you might want to consider not 4-betting if you think that you have an edge versus the opponent post-flop with a hand like, say, King 10 suited that can either 4-bet or call. The third tip about 4-bet pots is that you have so many chips in the middle and so few chips behind that you really do want to play aggressively and just get it in and accept that, if you're behind 50% of the time or behind even 70% of the time, that can be okay because you've already invested such a large sum in the pot, you're getting extremely good odds to stick the rest of your stack in. So I'm not saying that there aren't opportunities for hero folds versus some players, but you do just want to keep in mind that this is not the area to be really scared and conservative. This is the area to just kind of go for it, especially if you're playing someone who is relatively balanced. Okay, so I have here a 3-bet from the small blind, and then a 4-bet from the button, and a call from the small blind. What you're going to see on a board like 6-4-3 two-tone is that after the small blind checks and the big blind bets the preferred size, which is about 1/4 pot, you'll see that pretty much any pair is good enough to stack off. And if you want to see the small blind's response, all in, button will call with ace-king off and ace-king suited. They are supposed to. And so you do sometimes get it in ahead in theory. Although at lower stakes, you may find that this is not happening very often. And that's okay, though. When they fold ace-king off and ace-king suited, it means that your bluffs are making a lot more money. The fourth tip I have for you is about finding bluffs in a 4-bet pot. So there are weaker players that will just never fold in 4-bet pots, and you really want to decide whether or not you're going to bluff a certain player very selectively. If you are, let's say you're playing 50NL Zoom, and you know that somebody in that pool is like one of the best regs in 50NL Zoom or something like that, that might be a player who is aware of the fact that another strong player will have a difficult time finding bluffs in a 4-bet pot. So I'll give you an example of where those bluffs come from and how you might adjust the frequencies of those bluffs to 0 or 100% depending on what your read on that player is. If you have a hand like King Queen of let's say Queen Jack of Diamonds here, you're not even really bluffing. Like, you're just happy to get it in with the equity you have. You're not really praying for a fold. You don't care what they do. So how do we find hands that are like actually bluffs and get to do a dance when my opponent folds and are just like super happy? That's hands like sixes, right? And that's pretty tough to find. This means that for some players, when they see you raise, they are going to fold a hand like queens here, like really quickly, because they just don't see how you could be bluffing. You really, really need to kind of be advanced and use your own judgment, but you can consider throwing in really random bluffs that seem like punts, some percentage of the time. And if you did it at a small frequency, it would already be GTO. But if you did it at a higher frequency, you might find that it yields a higher number of folds than it should versus certain players. So let's say if I raise here to 22, what's the defense? Yeah, you might see a hand like jacks fold pure, a hand like queens, which is indifferent, fold pure. And these are, I'm not going to expect anyone to fold a king, but these hands that are indifferent and mixing might become pure folds versus advanced players that really just can't imagine you bluffing here with a hand like sixes. The last thing I want to say about 4-bet pots is that just the number one thing you can do is not play scared. It is a big spot, it is a scary spot, and your emotions, if you're not used to 4-bet pots, are going to run higher than they will in other aspects of the game. It is just going to be something that you have to get used to. Every single time you enter a 4-bet pot, if it's new to you, just remember that you are playing the same game as you are in a 2-bet pot, and the same principles apply, and you just want to make the best decisions possible and be totally okay with the result. I know that's easier said than done, but I think the first step is just being aware of the fact that when you don't have a lot of experience playing these huge pots, it can be challenging emotionally. So really accept that, embrace it, and then prepare yourself to look for the best possible decision. Even when you have a hand like aces or kings, just say to yourself, okay, this is a spot where, if the flop is wet, I'm not just going to shove because I'm scared. I'm going to play this hand the way that I think is the most optimal, generates the most money, is the most balanced, however you want to set that goal. Okay, so that's it for my tips on 4-bet pots. I hope some of you found that helpful. As always, I am Collie at Colliepokercoaching.ca. Run good and have a good rest of your day.